Hello and welcome to part two of week two. Still systems and managing information systems. We previously talked about organizations and a bit of technology. We will continue on that, and now we'll be focusing on the economic impacts and move on slightly away. So, number one, it's important to take note that one of the major things is that IT changes relative cost of capital and the cost of information. How do we explain this? Cost of capital of that's like cost of acquiring your capital stuff or even getting information. Previously, it would cost you more to get the same information. And in class, we use the example of even to get information on what is the best item and where to buy it from. Traditionally, somebody would have had to leave office, that's time spent, and move around from shop to shop to gather invoices, that's fuel and again time spent, then come back and spend time to evaluate the various invoices. That is one way. On the other hand, you could just sit in your office and check on the websites of those providing the service or product you want, and then you click. I mean, after a few distance, you have your information ready. Or you just use social media or internet to spread out the information. The information will come to you. People will compete instead of you rather going after them. So, internet, or let's just say technology in itself, has affected how this is done. Also, we should now be beginning to be considering information systems as a factor of production, not like another tool that is just there. It's a factor of production. And we know that factors of production, we will normally budget for them on a recurring basis. So if you have to pay for labor on a monthly basis or electricity on a monthly basis or pay your taxes quarterly or whatever, consider what you invest in technology by way of subscriptions and all that as a factor of technology that production that you should be paying for regularly. A lot of people still think it is too expensive to go into the use of technology, and that's because they do not budget for it as a factor of production. Okay. What we're also saying is that IT affects the cost and quality of information and changes the economics of information. Economics there are organizations now that just gather data and sell it, and they make money from it. Uh, the more access you have to information, the more likely, if it's a company, you can make better money or at least you'll be more efficient than others. Okay. And it's making information here, we are saying it affects the cost. It's making information acquisition generally cheaper. Okay. I'm saying generally, it's not all the time, but generally it is cheaper now to get information than previously. Okay, that's another impact IT has on organizations. Okay, and so this point is not a sub, it's a type which should have been more to the left hand side. By saying that helps firms to contract in size because you are now going to reduce transaction costs. Okay, so if the size of the firm were a million Ghana cedis and transaction costs alone take like let's even say 10 million Ghana cedis. Once you introduce technology, gradually you will be reducing the cost of transactions as explained earlier. So you are more or less saying you are now contracting the size. I'm talking about the fiscal size, not physical, fiscal, financial, so to say, size of the organization. And that just makes room for more efficiency because now you have less to worry about. All right. Technology also allows for outsourcing. Of course, outsourcing has always been there in the whatever industry. People have always depended on outsiders to come and do things for them on contractual basis and all that. But technology has made it even much easier, and now the outsourcing is not just local but actually international. And we've given several examples of people in Ghana working for companies abroad and vice versa. All right. Still on similar stuff, we're talking economics. I'm sure you have come across the transaction cost theory. You are the business guy, so you probably understand this better. But in summary, from a non-technical, from a non-business perspective, all we just say is that the transaction cost theory says that, I mean, organizations will try as much as possible to minimize transaction costs. I think that's the long and short of it. No organization will go out there and say we want to inflate prices for ourselves. They want to find ways to minimize their transaction costs. When you go out there to buy something, you want to buy it as cheap as possible, but the person selling wants to sell it as high as possible, but he will go and also try to buy it again as cheap as possible. We all want to minimize costs so that we can maximize profit. What is technology doing in this? We're saying that IT lowers the market transaction cost for firms, and that makes it even worthwhile, even more like it kind of using technology allows organizations to better take advantage of the transaction cost theory. That's basically what we want to say. Or we are saying that the theory's existence is even better enhanced by the introduction of technology. Okay. So it's now allowing firms to be able to do more business, transact with other firms rather than growing the number of employees. So you get other firms or even individuals to do the work for you so that you don't have to have somebody you pay monthly to do the same work. Okay, because once you give it to another firm, you pay just one off or for a few more months, and then the work is yours or the product is yours. Okay. We've already looked at this earlier where we say IT flattens organizations. I've talked a lot about that previously, and post-industrial organizations. So once people are moving out of the industrial revolution age or companies that manufacture, and we are going more and more into technological or the information age organization, we are seeing that we are beginning to rely more and more on knowledge and competence rather than on formal positions. It is very common now that in an office, somebody who is not even the finance officer or not even in the finance unit tends to spend more time helping those people out because maybe he has a very good understanding of Excel or the computer system they use. I think that's a very easy example. We are beginning to have people sitting at home, maybe he has an HND in ICT, but because he has a good understanding of how social media works, he's now marketing for people through social media marketing, and yet he's not employed there as a marketing officer. This is what is happening in today's organizations, not in the industrial world organizations. It's important we know about this. And this goes back to something we talked about in week one, where we emphasize that if you are not computer literate, you are likely illiterate and you'll be less useful to your organization. This diagram just explains it. You can pause and look at it better. Okay. Oh, skip on. So, well, again, what we are saying is that once from the first point, uh, once we are getting to this post-industrial era, in we are in it, organizations' access to information becomes very important to their survival. That's basically the summary of it. And that's once you introduce technology, it can affect structure, culture, politics, and work. We've looked at that earlier on. And organization, when technology fails, a lot of the times it is because of resistance. It's not because the system is necessarily wrong. So you need to work on people's minds before you can introduce technology. There's always what we call the change management process. So what are the things you need to go through to be able to go through a successful change management system? One, consider the environment, and we've talked about that a lot. The structure, you need to look at it and make sure that everybody at every structure, every point of the structure, understands that this is coming to help them. You need to try to diffuse the culture and politics, or even if you cannot diffuse, let them buy into it. Okay. The leadership style is very important. The type of organization is very important. You don't just say, oh, I saw it work for Melcom, so you should work with Lasan Ventures. No, not necessarily. They are two different entities. Okay. Main interest groups who are affected by the system, the end users, you should think of their attitudes. This is a whole study in information systems. We call that perceptions. It's a whole thing by itself. You need to study. But of course, you think of the attitude. Are there people who think technology is coming to help them, or they think technology is coming to disrupt their work? You need to know that before you see what to do. If they are already IT savvy people who are all interested in technology, then this part is easy for you. They will even push it further for you. What it means is that you should expect a lot more demands on things to improve the system. But if there are people who will be resistant, you need to spend a lot of time training and training and training and retraining. Okay. So I'm going to pause here. We don't want this to go too long. We will have slide presentation 3.1 so that we spend a bit more time, a few minutes talking about Potter's models.